Hello F11 members and welcome to issue 26, March 2014, Fundamentals of Post-Production Video Tutorial Part 1. And this morning what I'd like to do is work with you through putting together a stitched panorama. It's something that we've done before in these video tutorials, but there's a few interesting issues with this particular shoot which I thought I'd just take the opportunity of talking through with you. Now you'll have read hopefully the accompanying behind the lens feature on my trip to Rio de Janeiro recently. Not the best trip I've ever done, quite frankly, because it started with a robbing on Copacabana beach, but the last night in Rio was good, and I ended up going up onto a hill looking down on Rio as dusk fell, and I made this panorama. So I have here these shots here. If I take this one, this one, this one, this one and this one, so just 5 images to be pieced together to make a moderately wide panorama. Now I've shot vertically, as I always try to do. The reason we do that is because it absolutely maximizes the quality of the end image. We're using the most image area we possibly can to piece together a picture, which is going to end up being a big file. But nevertheless, we always strive for the ultimate quality. Now you'll have noticed here, if I just go to this frame for example, the composition of it is all in the bottom half of the image area. The top is just all sky. Why didn't I angle the camera down a bit more to have less sky in the frame? Well, because I'm rotating the camera on the tripod head, by angling the camera down, that would have caused distortion of these verticals down here and made problems for me stitching the picture subsequently. So when I'm doing a panorama, I always keep the camera absolutely dead level so that the horizon is literally bisects the image area. What that means is that I end up with pictures with too much sky. In this particular case, I am subsequently just going to end up cropping much of that off. It just has to be. The thing is also, we have a very plain blue sky here. If I look at any of these images, you'll see here total uniform blue tone there, and that's going to cause a few problems with stitching of the picture, because any kind of discrepancy with how the images are matched up could cause a bit of a visible join to be seen here with such a perfect tone, unblemished tone in the sky. So to handle that, what we're going to do is use lens profiles to correct the coverage of the image. I'll come to that in a minute. With panoramas, processing of the RAWs, you can see up here, here's the exposure information, ISO 100, 59mm focal length. I use the 24 to 70mm lens at f8 with an exposure of 13 seconds. I metered for that manually, and each frame has been exposed using that same exposure setting. Okay, so what I need to do now is process these and convert them into TIFFs so that we can then stitch them together in Photoshop. But as with any image, first of all I need to actually do some adjustments. So we always have to bear in mind with panoramas that what we're doing is whatever adjustments I make to one have to be the same to all of them. That's something that is key to consider if we're going to get an accurate joining up of the images without any discrepancies between them. So looking at this image now, if I hover my cursor over this indicator up here, it's telling me that I'm actually clipping a few highlights. And if you look down here when I do that, you'll see just a few tiny little red specks appearing virtually indecipherable, but there's a few just down here on the beach telling me that I'm losing some highlight detail there. I could choose to try and pull those highlights back a touch, which I will do, but they're so tiny, so insignificant, I'm not really worried about them. My black point looks fine. Any attempt to bring the blacks back would cause clipping, so I'm gonna leave that untouched. In terms of the other adjustments, nothing needs to be done really. I'm gonna just select here the medium contrast default setting, just to give a bit of contrast to the image. That looks better. And I'm going to adjust my sharpening as usual using the Sharpen Scenic default preset tool here, and then adjusting my masking. Hold down Alt, bring the masking slider over until I see that it's affecting just the sky and some of the water without touching the detail in the city and the landscape. About that looks right to me, and it really is as simple as that. I'm not going to do anything else to the image, because if I start making any more adjustments really, those adjustments will need to be applied to each and every image, and they may not be applicable. One thing I'm going to do though is down here, lens corrections, I'm going to click on here, enable profile corrections. What that's done, if I click it off again actually, can you see up the top here, top right, there's just a little bit of vignetting creeping in. What's vignetting? Well, it's where the lens has not, there's not totally even coverage across the image area. In a nutshell, most lenses produce a brighter area in the middle of the frame to the edge, and you can just see a touch of vignetting creeping in here in the corners. Normally, most picture taking situations it's not an effect. In fact, sometimes it can be desirable and we may even want to accentuate it. But in this particular case, we need really even coverage where these images are going to join up. Otherwise we'll see fluctuations in density across the sky, and that would be a disaster. So by clicking on Enable Profile Corrections, it's recognized the lens I've used here and dialed in the appropriate correction to actually even the coverage there. It should help making a really accurate stitch possible. The other thing I'm just going to do, much of the sky is going to be cropped off, but I am actually going to add a touch of a grad filter here, fairly subtle, but nevertheless I think it will help to just darken down the image a touch, or the sky a touch, to about there. Okay, click on Done. Now I've applied those corrections. What I need to do then is select all of the images that are going to be stitched together. Do that down here. There's 5 of them in all. And if I now go, still in the develop mode, if I now go sync, and it comes up with this palette asking me what I want to synchronize, virtually everything is ticked, so that the adjustments I made to that one image will be applied equally to all of them. And you can see down here it comes up with these little plus and minus icons indicating that adjustments have been made. This point now, I want to export this image, so I'm going to go to Export in the Library module, and then choose where I want to put the images, and it's in a folder down here called Processed. You'll all have your individual ways of doing that. I'm going to select that folder. I'm going to put it in a subfolder called Brazil. Okay, I want to rename the images to Rio. I want the images to be TIFFs, ProPhoto RGB color space, 16-bit color depth. I do not want to resize the images. I want them full size, 300 dpi. I don't want to sharpen because I've adjusted the sharpening already. I don't want to watermark. And what I'm going to do is go after export, open in Photoshop CC. So now if I click on that, that will export those pictures and we'll come back and look at them in Photoshop. So the images have opened up in here in Photoshop, and here they are, all 5 of them. The next thing I'm going to do is let Photoshop's auto merging do its thing, and the way to access that is go File, Automate, and then down here there's a tab that says Photo Merge, and up comes this command. So if I go, I normally always tick this one, cylindrical. Auto tends to do strange things, starts kind of trying to stretch it at the corners. Cylindrical's the one. I'm going to add open files. I'm going to ask it to blend the images together. Now you notice there's a box down here says vignette removal. I don't need to tick that because we've applied those lens corrections in Lightroom. And I don't want it starting to try and mess around with distortion either. We're just going to keep things simple. So I just click on OK and let it do its stuff, and it's stitching now. How quickly it does it will depend very much on your computer power, also generally speaking whether how many images you've got and how big they are. I have in the past stitched 18 full size 16-bit 120 megabyte images together, and that took some time and some computing power to do it. But this is a relatively modest task, 5 frames. I always quite enjoy this moment, just sitting and watching it, and up comes the end result. I still think it's magic. I still love panoramas. They have a real appeal, wonderful quality, and I just think for many scenes it's the perfect format, that letterbox size image. So I'm letting it just play in real time so you can see what's going on. Photoshop, generally speaking, does a really good job of merging images, and there it is. There is the proof in the pudding. Now there are specialist panorama software options available, but really I can't see the point. If you can do this in Photoshop without having to spend money on extra software packages, why would you do anything else? So at the moment I'm just going to bring over the layers palette here so you can see what's going on, and we have the images stitched together, and you can just see the joins here where Photoshop has very cleverly decided the line is where they merge together perfectly. And if I then just click on and off the layer icons here, you'll see each individual layer represented, and that's all well and good. So what now, if we're happy with all of this, which I am, what I do is first of all give my computer a bit of a break. It's been working hard, it needs a coffee break. We can close down the individual images which we've stitched together. We're finished with them now. Just leaving the panorama there. And at this stage I would go to layer, flatten the image, and now what I'm going to do is just save this, okay, because well, any kind of power cut or whatever, we'd still have the image there without having to go back to square one again. So I'm just going to go save as, and I'm going to call it, I tend to take the middle one there of the frame and then just call it Pano. Save that, and that's fine. Okay, so now I can continue to work on this image. So first thing I need to do is crop it. and actually it's coming here to the tools panel. If I select the crop tool there, and now I can just move in the crop to wherever I want it. I'm gonna go about there, and now, as I said earlier, I want to chop off much of that sky. It's way too much. And what I'm doing is bringing down the crop mark so that the intersecting top third is roughly laid along that horizon there. I think that will have a pleasing symmetry to it. I'm going to adjust down here at the bottom this bottom area. Let's just move that crop down a touch more, and I'd say that's about it. On the right it looks okay, maybe move it in a touch. Generally speaking, when you're looking at a panorama, one thing to be aware of is, sure, have it as wide as you like, if that's really adding to the image, but the wider you have it, the more the image is going to look like a sort of bootlace picture, this tiny little image stretched across the screen. Panoramas do not represent well on websites or on monitors, really. They need to be printed up big to be seen at their best. Nevertheless, so generally speaking, I don't want this image to be wider than I need it to be, so that looks about right to me. Okay, I just move this a touch out there, and that's the crop done. I hit enter to finish the cropping, and you can see I've left this white area down here. Now in the past our options would either be to crop it out or to very laboriously clone in that detail, but now what I'm going to do, we have this wonderful situation here. I'm going to use the magic wand. I'm going to just, by hitting Control and plus, magnify the image. Let's look down at this bottom area of the image. I've used the magic wand, and with these settings here, tolerance of 20 and contiguous, just click on that image and it's selected that area. I now have an action. Well, no, let's do it manually. I'm going to go select, modify, and expand that selection by just 2 pixels, okay? And now, if I go to edit, fill, and it's got content aware there, if I click on that, it should, hopefully, fill in that area intelligently. It's just amazing really what it does. I come out on that now, back to real size. I can go select, deselect, and wow, pretty much there. Let's just take this toolbar out of the way for the moment because it's a bit distracting. Now I'm going to work on the image. I'm going to use the select, the halo, the lasso, and generally just select this rough area here, and then going to select, modify, feather, pretty broad radius, 400 pixels, and now go image adjustments, curves, bring the curves over. I want to just adjust the general contrast of the top sort of third of the frame. So again, just by putting in a touch of an S curve, I added a touch of contrast to that top part of the image. Let's bring this down here, click the preview on and off. It's probably a little bit over the top there. If you go too much, the colors start to look a bit yucky. And we don't want that, do we? We always want subtlety. Just actually going to darken it a touch. That way. So how's that looking to you? About right to me. Going to go with that. I go select inverse and I just want to go again, image adjustments, curves, and in this particular case I'm just going to boost the brightness of the lower part of the image a touch, the merest touch. Preview on and off. I think that's about it. Looks pretty good. Next thing I do, select, deselect. Just this image over here just looks a little bit flat, so I'm going to go with the, here we go, using this, the lasso tool, and just roughly select an area, something like this. I'm going to go use one of my actions here, feather 100, play that, and now image adjustments, curves again, and just put a touch of contrast into that area there. Needs to be darker. Clearly I don't want to do too much so it starts looking obvious, but it does give a little bit of bottle, and it's these little adjustments that can really lift a picture. Do you see? I'll go with that, and at this point I'm fairly happy with my progress so far with what's been done. Okay, the image is done, and that is it. Again, nothing particularly revolutionary about this image, a fairly straightforward panorama. I'm pleased with the result, very pleased with the result. If you zoom in, you can see the quality of the image is pretty impressive, and if I just move around the image area there. So the one thing to remember with this was applying the same adjustments to all the frames, using the lens profiles to correct for any vignetting or uneven coverage, and look at just how even the tone in the sky looks. You cannot see where the join is, and that's why we had to be so careful about that, and it's worked. The other thing was when it came to processing here, stitching the images together, using the magic wand and then the content aware fill to just take care of those little white bits around the edge of the frame, and then fine-tuning the image as we would do any image, and there's the result. Okay, thanks for that. We'll be doing more stuff in part 2, and I'll look forward to doing future video tutorials for you in the coming months. And as always, if you have any suggestions and requirements, F11 members, we'd like to hear from you. Please tell us what you would like, and we'll do it. We're here for you. Okay, thanks and bye.